So, hi everyone. My name is Ainsley, and I'm the Special Projects Manager at the Gaia Project. I'd like to thank EECD for giving us the opportunity to host this panel during their summer learning series. And before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that the land upon which the Gaia Project works is the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Wabanaki Confederacy. And as treaty people, we respect the peace and friendship treaties, and we do our very best to work in solidarity and friendship. The Gaia Project has been working with New Brunswick K-12 students for nearly 15 years on programs related to climate change, waste, general sustainability, energy, and more recently, green careers. And our mission is to empower youth to take action on climate change through education. And that's why we want to help youth across New Brunswick explore how they can take climate action to the next level as professionals. For us at the Gaia Project, a green job means any job or career that intentionally contributes to a more sustainable world and helps address environmental issues like climate change. Taking action on climate change means integrating sustainability across all sectors and industries, and we believe that all jobs have the potential to become green jobs. When we do these panels in person, we often ask students if they know exactly what type of job they want to have after graduating high school. Typically, we don't get very many hands being raised when we ask that question. Then we rephrase it to ask more of a rough idea about if students have any idea about what they want to do in high school, kind of a rough idea. And we often see a lot more hands go up. So it's really common for students to not know exactly what they want to do after high school, which is part of the reason why we do these panels. The rise in green jobs is a major employment trend of the coming decades, so we want to make sure to introduce students to these green job opportunities and see what's available right here in New Brunswick, because we don't necessarily have to leave to find a lot of really great green jobs right here. And we want to highlight the diversity of green jobs available in New Brunswick. When we think of a green job, maybe the first thing that comes to mind is someone who works in a renewable energy sector, maybe working at a wind turbine or a solar farm, or someone that works at an environmental nonprofit. And while these jobs certainly are green jobs, they can extend far beyond this as well. Heat pump installers, arborists, landscapers, communications managers, lawyers, and architects, and much more can all be considered green jobs if they're helping to improve the environment in some way. And today we will be highlighting two individuals who work in green jobs in New Brunswick and introducing what their green job looks like and learn about how they got to where they are today and have some advice given about what they wish they learned in high school and advice for high school students in general. And today I am joined with Brittany Cormier, who is the climate change coordinator at the town of Tantramar, and Andrew Mathis, who's the permaculture consultant and founder of Oasis Farmery. So now let's see what these jobs have in common. So, my first question for the panelists today is how would you explain your job to a high school student? And we can start with Andrew and then go to Brittany.
Sure. Thanks, Ainsley. So I help people design their properties and communities to better meet their needs while also contributing to a flourishing future for all. So some days this means that I'm building community food forests where anyone can come to harvest food as a food security project, or other days I'm teaching classes on how to make bat houses or compost. So as a permaculturist or regenerative designer, I've got this set of tools, design principles and ethics, to work with the rest of the natural world and to try to make it a better place for all life to thrive. So it's pretty wide. My focus is mainly on food forests and other community projects, but yeah, it's all kinds of stuff.
Wow, that's super interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. Brittany?
So, as a climate change coordinator with Tantramar and EOS Eco Energy, I have no shortage of things to do, which is how I like it. But I will be working in climate change mitigation and adaptation, which switches from day to day, whether it's preventing or lessening the impacts of climate change by introducing electrical infrastructure, EVs, electrifying the fleet where we can with the municipality. And then for adaptation work, I've been working with the Stormwater Retention Pond Project, which is to help us adapt to more heavy flooding, as well as storm surges, extreme weather events, all the things that Tantramar is tackling in the next little while to prep ourselves, emergency services, any kind of different projects, scientific monitoring to make sure we understand the changes that are happening associated with it. I do community outreach, working with community members, schools, high school students, as well as council members and municipal staff, which is really fantastic. This is a lovely place to work. And so it's really nice to get to know the people as well as the environment and the wildlife too. So a lot of things.
Yeah, you both wear a lot of different hats, and that's always interesting to see kind of what all falls under your role. Might not look like what you initially thought it would be, and you get different tasks. And yeah, that's always interesting to hear. So both very important work, and I'm so happy to hear about groups taking action on climate change and really working on improving the environment. So thank you very much for all the hard work both of you do. What do you love most about your job? Brittany, we can start with you and then go to Andrew.
Ooh, that's a hard one. I love most that I do get challenged by a lot of different tasks or a lot of different directions, depending on who I'm working with, whether it is municipal staff, putting on that hat, the community, or scientific monitoring with EOS Eco-Energy. There's so much to know and there's so much to learn that it's really fulfilling work. And don't get me wrong, it's hard for sure, but it's just so nice to be integrated in this network of people who understand what issues we're tackling and where we should be looking to improve and trying to do that together, since we're much stronger together. This is not a small issue. And then networking with people such as yourselves and being inspired every day. The green sector it's amazing. So I'm very happy with everything. Other than the lack of sleep some days.
For sure. And it's a scary project working to tackle climate change, obviously. So definitely I like the fact that you highlighted the working together and how that can really help with this very large problem that we're unfortunately seeing so much more of. So that's really great. I'm glad you're enjoying your job as well. Andrew.
I would definitely agree. Working with other people on projects is extremely fulfilling. Feeling like there is a sense of community behind different projects and seeing them move forward, and that it's not just your own initiative that is pushing a project forward, that it's really a team effort. That is definitely a huge part about what I love about what I do. And also, I also do a bunch of teaching, and that's really rewarding. I've been teaching an introduction to permaculture and food forest design course, and that's a 7-week course. And it's really exciting when I can see people leave the course with a little bit more of a hopeful view of the future and what they can do. And it's, again, one of those examples where I don't have to be trying to put in 100 food forests. I can teach people how to do it, and they're motivated to go out and do it and show others, and it just spreads, right? So yeah, that's a big piece.
Absolutely, that's amazing. We always like to think about taking local action on a global issue, and both of your jobs definitely highlight that. And it's so nice to see. It's a great feeling when you see people take away a positive thing from a learning experience. So really happy to hear about all the great work being done there, and that you're both so inspired and passionate about your work. So that definitely helps when tackling a pretty heavy topic. So kind of going along with that, so climate change is becoming an increasing concern for people around the world. We're seeing a lot more impacts right here in New Brunswick. You've kind of touched on this a little bit before, but how does your job help address the climate crisis? And we can start with, sorry about that, we can start with Andrew and then go to Brittany.
Sure. So yeah, the kind of physical things that I do to address climate change are things like planting trees and food forests, growing local food, native plant plantings for pollinators, increasing biodiversity, capturing rainwater in different forms, ponds, and increasing efficiency of buildings. But there's also, like we kind of mentioned before, the kind of less tangible actions that we can do, like building community and having this shared vision of a better future. I find it's really easy to get bogged down by how large the climate change issue is, but we need to find ways to maintain our energy in order to contribute to the solutions. And I think having some sort of grounded sense of optimism in the future is a really strong way to stay focused.
Absolutely. I love that. That's a really great sentiment to share. Yeah, it's easy to kind of feel a little bit burnt out when you're tackling such a big problem. So definitely knowing, having that groundedness and is really important. So thank you so much for sharing that. Brittany.
Yeah, that is really inspiring. So to tackle the climate crisis, for sure, it can be immensely overwhelming, not just for an individual, but for an entire community. I started working in Sackville, now Tantramar, as of January after the amalgamation in the province. In October. So I moved from working 5 years in Moncton, and then coming here, it was not that anybody had any doubts that things were happening, that the climate crisis is very present, and it is very here. And being in a place that is below sea level, that is so close to the Chignecto Isthmus, the area between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, which is extremely at risk, in a storm surge that could break our only path between provinces. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but everyone's on board, which gives us an advantage. And so in my line of work, working with a municipality and an environmental nonprofit, sometimes I could be working with municipal staff to make sure that we have all the information we need to make informed choices, to make sure that council is aware of the impacts and what directions we should be, whether we could do something by implementing policies, bylaws, adaptation plans, and plans for fleet electrification and the electrical infrastructure, as well as in an environmental nonprofit sector and field. We can do that through projects and really get the community involved. And we actually just did a couple food forests too this year. Yes. So I'm like really enjoying this. And I would love to learn from your courses because it was amazing. It was really inspiring to see a lot of people, get involved, get their hands dirty, and be like, yes, this could be really beneficial. We see the stormwater management benefits. We see the food security benefits. And yeah. So multifaceted approaches.
Absolutely. I think that's a really important message to share, is that this is such a diverse and all-encompassing challenge that we're facing, and that we really need to get all industries, all sectors involved, education, but also industries and municipalities as well. It's great to hear that your municipality is actually, everyone is on board. It's nice to hear that. Unfortunately, it is, because you're noticing these impacts a lot more, but it's not so much of a faraway problem anymore. It's definitely something we're experiencing so much more on a local level across Canada and just in New Brunswick. So definitely great to hear about all these organizations taking action on this large problem. Something to follow up with that on is, what do you think the future of green jobs will look like down the road? Do you have any guesses or any thoughts about what green jobs could look like? And we can go from Brittany to Andrew.
For sure. I think that the Gaia project has been amazing in highlighting that green careers are looking a lot different than we thought they would be 10 years ago now, which is great, because for people that want to get into this sector, and there's a lot of different ways that you can introduce or get your hands dirty. But I know between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, we have a lack of experienced climate change adaptation folks, is all that I hear from Climate Atlantic, as well as people who have experience in tackling these in different ways, whether that's through project-based, looking and applying for different funding, as well as working your way through policies and bylaws, since this is there are a lot of new approaches, but that can be as challenging as it can be inspiring and fulfilling. Mm-hmm. So I think it's going to look better. Good. There's going to be a lot more informed and a lot more people to train anybody who's interested in coming. And I hope that it gets bigger. There's a lot more green in different sectors.
Absolutely. Those are great points. Thank you. Andrew?
Yeah, I totally agree, Brittany. I think we need to have people trained on what they can do. And Ainsley, I think you were right when you said like there's a high potential for all jobs in the future to be green. I think if we think about not that I was looking for a job when the World Wide Web was out, but people were all like, "Oh yeah, those World Wide Web jobs, right?" And it was like its own thing. But now all jobs use the internet to some degree, and I think that's what we're gonna see as we move forward, is that all jobs are going to become related to, and it's just going to become more common sense to direct our energy towards climate. And there's this idea, I find it very inspiring, so I try to tell as many people. There's this idea of a tipping point for nonviolent revolutions. The tipping point for the population is only 3.5% of the population having a shared vision for the future, and it's always successful looking back over history. So it's not that we need to convince everybody, because we're not always going to be able to convince everybody, but we only need a small percent of the population. And so I imagine in the Tantramar area, you are far over that 3.5%, and things are moving very smoothly. And I think in New Brunswick in general, things are moving in that direction faster than other places. So I think we're in a good place.
Absolutely. That's really inspiring to hear. And that fact is really interesting. And it's such a great message to share, just that individual action and small groups of people coming together can really add up and make a big difference. So really great to hear about that. And we've seen through our Green Experts program, we've seen people talk about how they started at a company in one role, and then over time they've kind of shifted their focus because they were really focused and really passionate about the environment. So a job that kind of started out as like communications and marketing shifted fully into more of a sustainability role. So I think there's a lot of potential for you to bring this to the table if it's something that you're passionate about. So thank you so much for your great answers for that question. My next question is, what are some important skills that someone would need for your job? Andrew and then Brittany.
Yeah, I would say like communication is key. It would be right up there in top skills, specifically the abilities to accept feedback from others and collaborate with others. Again, this is not going to be something that we can do by ourselves, and we can't let our egos get in the way of finding better solutions. So I think that's a really key skill. Curiosity is another one, and just having this drive to learn more, because like you said, Brittany, there's always something new to learn, and I totally agree with that. And then the other thing is whole systems thinking. So this is this idea of being able to recognize how different systems are related and interconnected, and how if you make an action in one place, it'll influence other parts of other systems. And so I think that's an important skill, because I think we traditionally we would educate people very, and we still do, very much in silos, right? Okay, this is biology and this is chemistry and this is physics, and they're very separate things. Whereas it's all the same, right? So yeah, those are some things I think.
Absolutely. Very interesting. Thank you. Brittany?
I'm pretty sure I'm just going to end up saying the same. Those are all excellent. Yeah, and I would say that I really feel in my last 5-6 years working in the environmental green sector, like those are the ones that either make or break like careers in this. Having proper communication skills and being able to apply those to any position definitely helps, especially being not scared of social media, for sure. Whether, it can be a scary place, to be honest, but to be able to network and really use that to, whether it's getting out messages or connecting communities and different people that might, through the last 5 or 3 years in the pandemic especially, it's been able to keep us together a little bit stronger. I would also say silos are the worst. So that's definitely something that will come up and really challenge and create barriers. And sometimes you can see it in governmental organizations, but not being siloed in a position, especially in a green sector, where you can just have a much better multifaceted approach. If you do combine biology, microbiology, climate change, environmental sciences are very broad, and making sure you find experts in each of those to really apply that to the problems that we are finding are not siloed. And I'd say data analysis too. That's something that I found when I started out, it was one of my weaker skills. So when I was doing water quality monitoring, it was definitely important to find all of those little numbers and look at massive data sets and really try to make sense of it, because bridging science and community is also really important in working in climate change and projects, initiatives, and really trying to communicate what can be sometimes very heavy and numbersome and cumbersome, but yeah, and really push ourselves forward and being aware of what's going on.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to hear about the diverse skill set that people need and how that doesn't necessarily need to be a stopping point for you. You can learn on the job, you can build these skills up, and how it's not just those hard skills when you're learning about like your education and different things, but all these communication skills and things like that. Like communication is probably one of the number one answers I get for this question, is just being able to talk to people, being able to communicate your feelings about something and your thoughts, and being able to connect with your network. I think that's really important. So it's always nice to hear that. So thank you very much for sharing. My next question is, what job or career did you imagine yourself in when you were in high school? And does this align with where you currently are? And we can go from Brittany to Andrew.
I actually started out in something entirely different. I was going to be a journalist until I realized it was a very dog eat dog world and I wanted nothing to do with that. I went to the University of King's College in Halifax. So I did the foundation year program, which was very heavy on philosophy. And I went with journalism with that, and quickly burnt out and changed gears. Eventually, I switched and ended up going to Mount Allison University, and I found their environmental studies program late in my undergraduate journey, let's say. And I was really kicking myself and said, I wish I would have started with this and knew that that was an option. But just, around the time that I went to high school, it wasn't really something that I was exposed to. So I don't regret it. I find that I could be stronger to relate to somebody who has a different journey, has a different career path, and really try to ask for help in different or from different perspectives and different people in different roles too, to apply that to the work that I do today. And yeah, so that was my journey.
Did you know that your current job existed when you were in high school?
Absolutely not. I'm not sure that it did. I did return as a mature student. I took a few years off and I worked at different jobs. I was a tour guide on Theodore Tugboat. That was definitely my most cherished. But yeah, finding my way was really, it's been really great to get where I am today, for sure.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Andrew.
Yeah, I had I've been on a similar journey through what I thought I wanted to do and shifting gears a couple times. When I left high school, I wanted to build robots, and so I went into mechanical engineering at UNB, and halfway through my undergraduate degree, I started applying some of the same things, like these electromechanical systems, to growing food, and so I designed this automated greenhouse and started growing food using aquaponics. And then I started realizing how expensive that was to maintain a system like that, and how much time it takes to operate a system like that. So I started, well, how about we grow food outside instead of in this fancy greenhouse? So I started looking into growing perennials, and eventually a friend introduced me to permaculture, and I was hooked. And it was actually a friend that later went on to work for the Gaia Project. So yeah, it's all great.
Small world. Awesome. So my next question is kind of similar, but just how did you end up at your current job? So what kind of process led you to it? Did you have different educational experiences, volunteer experiences, job opportunities? I know that's kind of similar to the last one, but just maybe elaborate on it a little bit if you can. And Andrew, you can just continue, and then we can go back to Brittany.
Yeah, I think the kind of major shifts in my direction of thinking for where and how I ended up where I am now were all discussions with like acquaintances. They weren't quite friends at that point, but then they had similar interests, and I talked about what I wanted to do, and they talked about what they were interested in doing. And I saw how, oh, look, I could apply this in what I've been doing in a different way. And all of those people became very close friends afterwards. Like it was, like they've been great friends. So yeah, I think it's, this is definitely something I chose. I'd like to start my own permaculture practice because I want to have the freedom to choose the different projects that I find inspiring and dedicate my time to them.
Absolutely, that's great. Yeah, you created your own role, your ideal role. So that's amazing to hear. So thank you for sharing that. That's very inspiring. Brittany.
That is really amazing to hear. I have to admit, I give a lot of credit to my friends as well for my position. I mean, to be honest, I didn't know that this position was open since I was working about 5 years for a different environmental nonprofit in Moncton before this. And she had recommended that I take a look. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'll share this to my networks, like no problem. And she was like, for you. I was like, oh, interesting. So I really love having different friends that can see something that might be your interest, even if you're not aware of it yourself. And I'm really happy that I made that switch because this is exactly what I wanted to do at the end of my undergraduate. But for getting into the green sector entirely, after I finished at Mount Allison University, I was looking into different funding, different internships that I could start with to make sure that I was also able to pay rent and work doing something that I loved, which is not a great balance but when you do find it, it can be fantastic. So I found my own internship funding. I applied through the province at the time. I think it's changed since, and the sort of Science Horizons Fund, which is also people who graduate from undergraduates are eligible still. So keep that in mind, high school students. And then I went to an environmental nonprofit that I'd worked when I was a student, and I said, I want to work here. Is there any way that I can get a job? And my executive director at the time, she was like, yeah, sure, why not? And it was the best decision that I made to just walk in with a box of Timbits being like, I really want this. Can we make it work? So yeah, I definitely give credit to my friends and a little bit of Google searching about internship funding. Never hurts.
That's such a great lesson for high school students, is that if you're really passionate about something, if you think this is something you really want to pursue, do a bit of research. The job might not always come to you immediately. You might need to do a little bit of your own research, look into these funding opportunities. If you come to an organization with secured funding already and you have the skill set, that looks pretty good. It looks like you're you have a very strong initiative. So I think that's a really great lesson. That happened to me as well in my experience. So it's a really great opportunity for students to just kind of put yourself out there and see what happens. So that's really exciting. I'm glad to hear that all worked out for you. What does your average workday look like? What's your work environment? I know you both wear many hats. So what does an average day look like? We will go from Andrew to Brittany.
So for me, it kind of depends on the season. When it's summertime, I'm out implementing projects, so like actually digging, hands in the dirt, planting trees and stuff like that, or teaching smaller workshops, usually very applied workshops on like compost or preserving apples or building bee homes or something like that. But then in the winter time, it's very much, that's when I get a lot of design work done. I try to push off a lot of my design work until the winter because I'm inside, I'm focused. So I kind of try to follow the season like that. And wintertime, I also try to teach some of these longer courses and into the fall too. If I'm going to be teaching a 7-week course, it's nice for it not to be taken away from the summertime when I can be outside and playing with my kids as much as possible. Yeah.
Nice. It's nice to hear that there's quite a diversity in that. No day is ever the same, I'm sure. So, and it changes so much seasonally. It kind of lets you switch things up, which is nice. Brittany?
I would have to say I try to be outside as much as possible as well in the summer. and hibernate in the fall and winter, whether that's writing applications for funding or doing more of the work that can be done inside. But every day might look a little bit different since I am in a two-pronged role, whereas I could be working with municipal staff at town hall, or I could be doing more of the environmental nonprofit work and being on projects like the food forest that I was able to take part in, which was so amazing. Or today I am coming back in and out of a day of water quality monitoring. So we are visiting different sites locally and sending in these samples to see what our local streams are looking like. So yes, it could be very different. I also like to visit our green roof that we have at Town Hall as much as possible. And yeah, weaving back and forth as much as possible. And
I mean, you were in the field right before you came onto this call, so definitely doing all kinds of different things from day to day, but even throughout the day. So really appreciate that. But it's nice when you get to kind of switch it up all the time. My final question is, do you have any advice for high school students who are interested either in a career like yours or just general advice to high school students, maybe something you wish you took advantage of? I would just love to hear, and I'm sure the students would as well. Brittany, you can go first, and then Andrew.
I would have to say, reach out for help, talk to as many people as you can, whether that's your mentors, local experts. I mean, if you're a high school student and you're reaching out, more than likely an expert would love to talk to you. And I know that the Gaia Project has many green experts who are also mentors.
We do.
But yeah, it's okay if you take time to find what part of this sector you would like to go into. Really find what you're passionate about and try a lot of different things. More than likely, this could benefit your skill set. So, I mean, there's no, bad journey for sure. And network and ask your friends and, make connections and different relationships and, have fun with it. And if you get overwhelmed, more than likely, a lot of us are feeling the same. So reach out, and this is a really fulfilling and great community to be part of. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing.
I would totally agree on all those points. Yeah. I would. Yeah. I think it takes a little bit of time to learn what you're really passionate about, but then find a community of like-minded people and talk to them about your plans for the future. And as you talk to them, your plans for the future will shift, and you'll find something that really fits for you. So I think it's just it takes time and networking, definitely. If people are interested in permaculture specifically, I would highly recommend taking a permaculture design course. It's kind of the standard education for permaculture, and after the pandemic, there's a ton of them online. And so this is a 72-hour course. Generally, it's a standard length, and there's so much information that you'll get out of a course like that. You'll be overwhelmed with different possibilities of directions that you could go, because the climate space is huge, and the permaculture space is also huge. Like you could raise bees for honey, you could be a market gardener, you could do all kinds of things, start a nursery of native plants, right? Collect compost and process it and sell it. There's so many things that can be done, and there's a lot to learn. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And it's definitely been something we've noticed so much more interesting, growing your own food and being more self-sufficient. And definitely great to see that there's places nearby that are doing this and teaching people about it. So really exciting. And I think you both touched on a really great point that we like to reiterate in these panels, is that people's career paths change often many times. And if it doesn't change, that's okay too. But just knowing that figuring out what you don't like is almost as valuable as figuring out what you do like, because then that you don't want to follow this career path. You want to try something new, and it's okay if these things change so many times along the way. And we see so many of our experts talking about that and how maybe they started out in nursing and then they ended up in this, or engineering, and they pivoted. So that's totally fine. And I think it's a really great lesson to share with students. So thank you so much. And do you have any final thoughts or anything that you want to share with high school students? Because that was my final question for the day.
For sure. If you don't like mosquitoes, don't go into water quality monitoring. I can itch a few bites right now. And Andrew, when is your next course for permaculture?
Yeah. Thanks. Well, I'm teaching one in October, actually, in person in Fredericton, but then I'm also doing one online. So that'll be kind of an open entry, do it from wherever kind of thing. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you both so much. I really appreciate you being here today. And I'm sure the students that watch this video will have some great takeaways from it. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedules, popping in from the field, doing whatever else you're doing. And yeah, I just really appreciate it. So thank you both very much.
Thank you, Ainsley.
Thanks so much.
Not a problem. Have a great day. Bye.